And joining me now is Justin Elliott. He's one of the reporters on that byline. He covers politics and government accountability for ProPublica. So, Justin, let me start with just your history as a reporter. I mean, in many ways, if I had somebody I was trying to get a response from decide to publish their response somewhere else, I guess the good news would be, okay, I'm on to something. They feel the need to respond. You ever had a relationship with a subject like that before?
Not really. And, like a lot of news organizations, we have what we call a no surprises rule, which is either in an interview or in writing, we like to put everything that we're thinking about reporting in front of a subject. And that's what we did with Justice Alito last week. We asked for an interview, sent a long list of questions over to the Supreme Court press office. And we were told by the court's chief spokeswoman Tuesday around noon that he wasn't going to be responding. And then, 6 or 7 hours later, I looked at my phone and saw that I was being accused by Justice Alito of being misleading in the story that we hadn't actually published yet. So
I'm curious.
We were very interested to see. We were very interested to see, his substantive response, which was, did engage with our questions. It
did seem. I was just going to, but before I get to the specific questions you asked him, I am curious. Did you go back to the spokesperson for the Supreme Court and ask them, did you intend to mislead us that there was going to be no response?
That conversation hasn't happened yet. We published around midnight last night. It was a long day, and I've been busy today. But I would like to have that conversation.
Right, because did Justice Alito mislead his communication shop, or did they mislead you on that front? And again, I think for all of us, that's these are important distinctions, because you want to know, can you deal with the Supreme Court communications shop on the up and up going forward?
Absolutely. And, I've only been covering the court for probably 6 months now. I've, a lot of years covering Congress, writing about the executive branch. One of the kind of strange things that I haven't fully got my head around about the Supreme Court is there's 9 justices, and presumably sometimes their interests are the same and sometimes they diverge, but there's only one press office.
Right.
And it's quite opaque how that works, what role the press office is playing versus the individual justices' chambers.
Right.
So like a lot of things about the Supreme Court, as I've learned in recent months, it's a bit of a black box.
Yes, it is. I think only the conclave in the Vatican is more mysterious to us reporters than the Supreme Court these days. Let me ask about the specific questions you asked of Justice Alito and what he answered. Based on his op-ed, did he attempt to respond to every question you asked, or were there some that he just did not respond to at all?
I would say he responded to most of them, but not all of them. I mean, I think there were several categories. One was just the facts of this luxury fishing vacation, his travel on the private jet provided by Paul Singer, the hedge fund billionaire. And really almost none of the facts are in dispute, which Justice Alito's op-ed made clear. What he is contesting is the legal requirement to disclose this private jet trip, and then also the question of whether he should have recused himself. It didn't answer some of our questions that were kind of more about politics. One of the characters in our story was Leonard Leo, longtime Federalist Society executive that we reported had actually secured Justice Alito's seat on Paul Singer's private jet. Paul Singer, a donor to Leo's groups. And Justice Alito did not engage at all with our questions about his relationship with Mr. Leo. But in terms of the main thrust of the story, which was this recusal issue and the disclosure issue, he did.
So is this a case where he can claim to be technically accurate about the disclosure issue, because there is no disclosure requirements for Supreme Court justices, or do you believe he did violate what loose guidelines there are?
Yeah, well, he's making an argument. We've talked to probably 7 or 8 ethics lawyers now, people that have served in, administrations of both parties. And it turns out that one of the few laws that actually does apply to the Supreme Court justices was passed back in the 70s after Watergate. It's called the Ethics in Government Act. And it does require disclosure of most gifts. I mean, unlike a lot of other federal employees, there's very few restrictions on what gifts they can accept.
Right.
But they do have this disclosure requirement in the law. Justice Alito's op-ed did not actually engage with the text of the statute, but instead said that he was interpreting the judiciary's filing instructions, right. Which and that was sort of what his argument centered on. We talked to some of our ethics experts who disagreed with him, and also just point out that, and we linked to this in the piece, there was many federal judges over the years, again, appointed by presidents of both parties, have disclosed private jet trips as gifts. So this is something that certainly some judges were doing.
And is this a beat now for ProPublica to go at this issue of how the Supreme Court justices conduct business in Washington? Is this something that just sort of, as you reported on one, others came through? How organic versus how much this is a beat?
Yeah, well, I spent the last few years before this covering taxes and sort of tax avoidance strategies by the rich. And then I was put on our democracy team. And of course, you can, as a reporter, if they say go cover democracy, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And my colleague Josh Kaplan and I, one of the other reporters on this, we actually originally set out to cover the judiciary more broadly. We were, we're very interested in the appellate courts, state Supreme Courts, and we ended up getting this line on Supreme Court justices' travel. It was not something we intended to make into a beat, but it sort of snowballed since we started reporting on Justice Thomas. And I think what we've realized is that some of the same ways that we've covered Congress and political campaigns, that's not always the reporting that happens on the Supreme Court, because there's so much other important, there's so many other important things to cover about the court, the cases, which is, of course, an important beat. So at this point, it's a beat, but we didn't set out for it to be a beat.
Well, look, I mean, Congress didn't start to have any of these kind of disclosure laws and use laws and all this stuff until the mid to late 90s, after abuses were surfaced by professional reporters. Justin Elliott of ProPublica. Justin, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.